Welcome back. Per the discussion of Meldrum, or I should say, rather, of Clarice Beckett, Agam and I had a discussion about the speed with which some of those things were apparently being made, some of those landscapes. And it reminded me of other possibilities, and so Agam has been out there painting night scenes. He goes out there and with a headlamp and sorts of wild stuff. He's been out trying to paint fairly quick uh, uh, images of city views. He's in Montreal. Or should I tell him that, Agam? Eh, anyway, so Agam, I'm taking liberties with addressing this question or crediting this question to you, but since you did want to see the studies I used to do a long time ago, and I referred to back in a memory video, I'm going to put this question to you. It says, I've seen your color studies of fleeting effects from car windows and wondered if you might talk about how you did them. And so this is a little bit of a reprise, but I think I went and looked, and I didn't want to do this twice because it gets to be just curious if you do. But I did only show, I think, two of these pastel memory studies. But I'm going to show you a bunch more, maybe a dozen or so more, and talk about how I approached it, just so you know. But they were typically far less than 30 seconds long in the reviewing. And I don't know if I've mentioned that to you before. Some could have more time involved in them, but I didn't find that my memory of the major masses and the major color relations changed that much. I had a pretty good lock on them in a matter of say, 30 seconds. And as you recall, I said I was driving down the road, and it would be typically either somewhere between Boston and where I live, a couple hours away, or Hanover, or Lebanon, New Hampshire, to where I live, which is more like an hour away. And so I'll probably give you a little bit of an idea where these places are, but let me just give you, before I say any more, though, I want to give you an idea of the size of these things. I mean, they're minuscule, right? I put it over here. So this is one that I did in a state house. I actually spent time as a state rep, which is one of those things you can do if you're in New Hampshire. But you see this is side, see how big my hand is? These are tiny, right? I call them postage stamps. They're a little bigger than a postage stamp. But the memories are such big, major mass memories that I didn't have to do a lot more to them. I'm going to do this with each of these that I show. I'm just going to turn them gradually toward the light, and somewhere in there it's going to get glary, and somewhere it's going to be impossible to tell what it is. But okay. But that just gives you an idea how big these things are. So this was a building, actually, this is a building out the window at evening at the State House in Concord, New Hampshire. So you can see that I didn't have time to do much thinking about the architecture. And so it was almost entirely about in fact, it was trying to be entirely about the effect with some addressing of the architectural proportions. All right, well, that gets you an idea what you can do with one. And I'll show you some other ones after I show you this group that I've actually taken photographs of, so you can look at them better. So it'd be very easy for you to think I had done these larger, but they're not large. So if you'll just look at these now, the one above is somewhere between Plymouth and where I live, Plymouth, New Hampshire, and the little bit of Venus up there, I guess, in the sky. I can't tell actually looking at this if it's a moon. No, it must be Venus. And then there's a little bit of a red light shining on the hillside. But what this is a memory of what I call three colors. And I usually use the phrase red, yellow, and blue when I do this. But I'm remembering the color and just using those as labels so that I separate them from each other. And it does help a little tiny bit. I'm not typically finding that verbalization is helpful. But I do find that when you're trying to memorize something, it really helps to have I would say some glue to something else, right? I learned when I was studying memory, I was with Gamble, I read a number of books on memory training just in general. And one of the interesting exercises that I found remarkably easy to do and very helpful was, for example, someone would read a list of 12 words, and you would be told to place those words in your room, somewhere in your room. So as the word came up, you'd place it on a shelf. You'd stick it to the corner of your bed. You'd stick it to, the ceiling light. And you just take the words and place them like that. And that, messing with that for a second and putting it in some odd place would give you the glue so you could remember most of the words. And so that's what I mean by that. So when I say red, yellow, blue, you could probably say 1, 2, or 3, just anything to say they're different. But I actually do find that one of them is relatively the most blue. So the top one in this set here is the blue, and the bottom one perhaps, and I do say red, yellow, and blue. The bottom one feels like the yellow, and the darker red, blue one, which is some clouds coming over, is so in my way of thinking about this, that's the red, yellow, blue. When you do this, you will take note just briefly of movements in those colors, but you're not looking to get littleness. It's all about major masses playing to each other and something about the general feeling of the drawing. So nothing too elaborate. The one down below, I really couldn't remember better than that, but there you are with the big 3. And you could argue that that one's 4 because I had a sense of yellow in the sky down below and to the left. And so the red was obviously the middle one, the top was the blue, but the bottom one was this odd thing out, right? And so I had to remember that too. And you can do that. If you actually remember 3, you can actually also remember the odd one as the odd one. So, yeah, excuse me. Yeah, it's one of those hot days in the video studio today. And the lowest one I think I've shown before, and I've done a number of those through my rearview mirror, and that was coming up from I think both of the last 2 are coming up from Lebanon to where I live. Probably that one looks like it's probably pretty close to fairly Vermont. All right. So what I do try to do when I'm remembering these, and again, you can see the sky is the blue. What I would call the yellow is the light, and then the red is the red or blue. And that's all I'm trying to do, except that I sort of notice the big configuration in some rough way. Not that I'm trying to care much about it, but it's it's part of the amusement. So and so let me just say what I do. I could almost never get these done that same night. So the next day, I would have a prepared sanded pastel paper and my pastels out, and I would just simply go into the studio and execute these things first thing in the morning. So I was able to retain that memory overnight. I couldn't do it over 2 or 3 nights, sometimes over 2, but I don't think I could ever hold them over 3 nights. So it was a temporary memory with the idea of getting it down on paper. The second one down here is it was one of those really cold days, just I think probably around, below Plymouth just a little bit. And Plymouth University, what is it? Plymouth State University is there, yeah. But anyway, there's a smokestack there for what I don't know. But the smoke sometimes as you drive by on the highway, and most of these are highway views, it just would look frozen in the air. And so you could virtually remember it by the bumps, but it would often take this value in relation to everything else. And by the way, in this world of red, yellow, blue, you're also going to notice what the darkest dark of those 3 are, right? And the lightest light. Just take for granted that you're going to do the values as part of the 3 colors, but it's just you're going to remember them by the red, yellow, blue, but you're going to remember that one's dark and one's middle, and you're going to notice which one is closer to being, like in the case of this darker blue, which is closer to being the darkest dark. And you can see that this is closer to the dark and not closer to the light, so it silhouettes more against the light, obviously, doesn't it? And that sort of thing you might notice if you've been trained a little bit in comparison, for example, in silhouette comparison. The strength of a silhouette is hugely important in picture making. So these are things you can observe and need to observe just in drawing from nature. That's what your mastery of nature is about. So the top one there was down in Boston, and in this image of it, at least, it really conveys compellingly my sense of rather awe. There was a wall of darkish clouds, and above it was rising this cumulus cloud, the kind some days lightning comes from and all that sort of stuff. And its little sister cloud over there to the left. And so its form impressed me. But again, you can see the idea of red, yellow, and blue. If you're holding on to that as yellow, you make sure you remember what yellow it is, right? So it's not yellow, yellow. But on the other hand, if it felt white, that would be a different story from if it feels slightly pink. And you'll try to incorporate those. I find it easier when you're doing these things, you need to get really near white, to go ahead and put white down and incorporate the color through the whites. Remember, most of what pastel is doing is you search for the color, you put down a color, and then you adjust it a little bit with the next color. Pretty typical. In this case, by the way, the sky and the cloud are virtually the same value. I could almost not find any difference there, so that makes your job a little easier. And then you can see there's a difference in the silhouetting edge of the dark cloud against the bottom versus the softer, if you want to call it that way, edge of that cloud against the sky. So in this case here, the yellow would be the light, the red would be the blue below, and the blue would be the note above. The one below was one of the most astonishing things, and I was pleased to get it this well. But a number of things happened like this in New Hampshire, and probably in a lot of the entire universe, of course, the entire world, planet. But there was this sort of skin of flat clouds making itself an interesting pattern. And then this under light, the sun coming under these clouds, was scattering its notes across it. But again, you can see how I would have thought about that as the red, yellow, and blue. And so this one, I did significantly put blue down. I put yellow down first because I always put the lights down first. It's way easier to keep them clean if you put the lights down first. And then would have begun to set the blues in and incorporate the reds. But it's pretty easy to see what those are. Now, the yellow in the sky that seems to go slightly something bluer below, that's the sort of thing I notice, that you can actually say, yeah, that's the yellow, but I remember that. All right, so that additional thing will just hang on to the other thing if you acknowledge it. Don't try hard to remember, by the way. Just try to enjoy it. Just try to actually let yourself see it. And if you see the three together, if you just stay still and don't go into aggressive memory work and memorizing, let's put it that way. Don't do that. Just simply watch and let it come to you. Well, and just using nothing but the words red, yellow, and blue, because if you say, there's a certain identification that doesn't have you zooming in necessarily, but an area is this, another area is that. But just look at it flat. And again, these are the sort of things you want to be training yourself to do in your basic training. And you'll begin to see how they play. You'll begin to own it. You'll begin to remember it enough to get it back later with your little keywords. So this is the above one. I don't know where that is. I think it's in my neighborhood over the foothills there, or whatever, the low hills, typical of New Hampshire. And so you'll see, again, this one has 4 elements to it. Again, that greenish kind of quality in the shadows of the hill as the sun's again going down. And so what am I taking for the red, yellow, and blue in this one, right? And one of them, but if you can get to 4 as long as you just admit that there's another one out there. The one down below is actually in my yard in the wintertime. And as you can see, it's not an attempt to memorize the shapes of the tree precisely, although I did take note of a few significant, sort of basic things. For example, like the mass of the tree it stayed massed till you got to the skyline there. But but you can see you can do this with red, yellow, and blue thinking without the limits of meaning blue. Anyway, that's about the limit of drawing that I would ever do in a picture. I think that's no. That's funny. Actually, I want to show you this one first. I'll go back to that. I don't know if you can actually see this, but I'm hoping you can. So I'm going to put this up. This is a night picture. Oops. Let's go this way with it. This is a night picture. I'm holding it against the background here that's darker, hoping you can see it. I'm betting you probably can't, but I'm going to just turn it toward the window more. Maybe you can see it. But this is just a night with some trees above, also in my yard. So maybe you can't see it, maybe you can. Moving it slowly. Maybe there's a spot in here where you can pause if it actually is worth anything. But you can, even really, really dark values, you can begin to accomplish them. My hand is moving so much, I'm betting you can't. I'm not even holding it still enough for you to see. It doesn't help. Nevertheless, the really low contrast pictures, like this one, Even these have that yellow blue. The sky above is blue. The trees are the dark trees are the red, and the middle there is the yellow. And then the lights of the lights of the stars. They typically play a role. You put them down as a white fleck if that doesn't do it, and the value thing is first, the most important thing. But if that doesn't do it, try flecking it in with a different color until you begin to get that feast of that world. And again, I think you can see that what was really happening in that one is that I'm so sorry, it's such a bad reproduction. But what's really happening, I'm not reproduction, but lighting. There's a golden movement here. You can see the golds are still there, moving into the blues. And then those reds go up and then configure, the big tops of the trees up there, the crowns of the trees, with the stuff happening below. And I did that a number of times. None better than this, but this is actually in damaged condition. So, so then we live 45 minutes from everywhere, 45 minutes from Lebanon, from Plymouth, from Littleton, and here's the ride back. Typical ride back from Littleton. It's just in such a location that at a certain time of night, typically these kinds of skies I see in the summertime, the cloud will sit there over a hazy night and turn these crazy pumpkin colors. I meant the moon. The moon will sit there and turn these crazy pumpkin colors. And again, you have to just let yourself feel it, right? You can memorize a couple things, but you can't go over there and stare at it because you'll drive off the highway. But I'm showing you these because of the variety of kinds of nights those things showed up. The top one hazy and later in the night, and the one below. With the buildings in the front, it particularly felt to me Chinese, Japanese, or something really had a fascinating quality to it. Some of these I've actually turned into, used in pictures, and some used parts of them in pictures, but none to the extent that I would be particularly proud of showing anybody yet. Now this one, though, this is a longer view, and I'm thinking I can show you this one to good effect here, but there, that might do it. So, and again, I'm just going to move it slowly in case it's easier to see. I guess it's facing the camera about here. I don't know where the light's best. I should just get used to this. I'm tilting it back. Maybe that'll help. Didn't try that with the black one. So what I have here is a night at the 1812 Overture, the Esplanade in Boston, 4th of July celebration. What an astonishing event that is. And but the fireworks goes on for some time, but people get out there into the water on their boats so they can watch it without the crowd. And so this is an attempt to actually remember a lot of shapes and things, along with the effects. And of course, I didn't get anything like what I would call the effects in the light above, but it gives you an idea of my efforts in that direction. And this was actually a fairly earlier on one than most of the other ones. So I was more curious about memorizing objects and frequently thinking that way, sort of like Whistler or something. And then I'll make one last point. I think I've covered everything. And I just wanted to show you how I have used one of them successfully. At least I think of it as successfully. But in, I didn't use that, did I? Let's see if it's down here. Maybe it is. No, I didn't use it. I was going to show you this, and I don't know why it didn't show up in the images. But in the top of this painting, which I can barely show you, I don't know if this is even going to work, but at the top of this painting, and since I'm not able to move cameras and stuff, I have to pull it into where my focus is, which is my face. But one night evening, again, this is on the way back from the Cambridge area. Cambridge, I meant the Hanover area. There was an evening cloud and a moon hanging out with it. So it's my red, yellow, and blue, and so this is a study for an imaginative picture of dawn, and I wish I could show it to you more clearly, but anyway, you can see how one might use memory in a picture like that, or anywhere. You might incorporate it. So yeah, all right. Well, that's the story, Agam. The nearest thing I have to what you're doing is the memory, the memory one I showed you with the clouds I mean, sorry, with the dark trees and all that sort of stuff. And then, of course, the night ones with the moon. But so I hope that gets the point across. Yeah. So I do recommend you try every kind of memory. I think it's always a good thing to actually evolve your memory a little bit. Find any number of ways to do it, and don't be intimidated. Just try something. But it's a lot more difficult to do if you have no skills in terms of making color relations. So don't forget to be the student of that first, the student of seeing. So this kind of stuff, there's a certain amount of self-evident information, when you're looking at value relations, what the darkest dark and lightest light is, you know how to get light effects, and you know how to get relative contrast between value units. So let me encourage you to keep working to be the master of nature. And then I think you'll find that a number of these things that you want to do from memory are more accessible to you. All right, Agam, thank you very much for that conversation, and I wish you well in your night work. All right, all right. So thank you all for your donations, for your comments, and sharing, and all the rest. I had a laugh from one of my students this past week, and she said, "It's so funny that you can't remember those 3 things you need to say, and I almost never can." I guess the last one is subscribe. So here we are. Uh, in any case, thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.